Welcome! We're here to talk about how Scrum works. So let's go! In our organizations today, people have a number of ideas on what our teams can work on. Scrum helps us identify the most important work that deserves our focus. Then Scrum helps us organize the people to tackle the work. And finally, Scrum will take us through the rituals and cadence that we use to plan and deliver the outcomes. All of this is intended to maximize the effectiveness, efficiency, and value for the organization. Now, these ideas on what to work on can come from anywhere, including customers, users, stakeholders, and even from our own team members. These ideas need to be assessed on business value and the importance to the customer. These ideas are refined, and it's decided whether we put them onto our team's work queue or not. This work queue is called the product backlog. This product backlog is managed by a person who we'll call the product owner. It's the product owner's responsibility to decide what goes in and what does not go into the product backlog, so that there is a single person responsible for representing business priorities and customer needs. Each item of work in the backlog is called a product backlog item. Many people simply call these user stories. User stories help the product owner communicate three areas. One, who is the customer or the user? Two, what does the customer or user need to do from a business function perspective? Three, why the business function exists. Now, this gives the team an idea on who the user is. Together, these three parts of a user story gives the team a high-level understanding to have a deeper conversation on the work item with the product owner. These user stories were meant to be brief and simple. In fact, user stories should be able to be written on a 3x5 card using a Sharpie. It should look like this. Now, be careful that user stories can start out as very big items. A user story can start out as an entire new product or a feature. It's the job for the product owner to take this and break it down into smaller, simpler user stories. So if you're building a photo sharing application, you may start with a feature that shows one photograph. You wouldn't want to spend time building a login page or a payments page. These are ideas important insofar as getting customer feedback. If you're in manufacturing, you might apply these user stories to build prototypes or even simple versions of your product before investing time and energy into more complex versions. Prototypes are great ways to iterate development. It gives you an opportunity to test your product with a customer. Or if you're using Scrum for the insurance industry, start with an insurance policy for a specific customer, for a specific purpose, and in a specific geography. And then test that policy with potential customers to see if there is market value for that policy. The insurance industry is heavily regulated at federal and local levels, where investing in regulatory compliance can be incredibly expensive. So instead of creating a product for an entire country, start by focusing on a specific region or market. Some principles of great user stories are: they should be independent. Each story should be fully deliverable at the end of the sprint if possible. They should be valuable. Each story should be connected to some customer value or business value. They should be estimable, so stories should be able to be estimated in size. If you can't estimate the story is probably too big or the story is unclear, and you'll want to define that story better. Stories should be small. As I mentioned, stories need to be small so they can be fit into the sprint itself. Stories should be testable. Each story must be testable so that it helps the team understand if the story is done. Some people use acceptance tests as a way to do this. Be sure that it's clear on what it means to satisfy the requirement of the user story using an acceptance test. It might look like this. Given that I have uploaded my photo, when I open up my photo application, I see my photo. Now, after splitting large stories into smaller stories, the product owner needs to put these stories in an order of importance. The product owner arranges these stories so that these are ordered in a prioritized way based off of stakeholder and customer feedback. The most important and urgent items go to the top, while the least important go to the bottom. Great product owners even find ways to remove user stories altogether. This means the product owner's job is also to say no to certain ideas that have little or no value to the business. It's very difficult to say no, but this helps the team from becoming overcommitted. Since the flow of new ideas and new work never ends, the product owner is always refining the product backlog and user stories, so this process is continuous, and the product backlog refinement process hardly ever stops. The people that do the work of creating the outcomes are called the delivery team. This team size should be 7 people, plus or minus 2. The team often is cross-functional, meaning that they have a wide range of skills to complete the work. While your team might have specialists, we know through team science that team members who are specialists can create weaknesses on your team. A delivery team understands this principle, and when a team member is overly specialized, they will quickly help cross-train that person so that he or she can do many of the other things for the team, and he or she should be able to train others on their own specialty. This is a great way to reduce knowledge risk. When we start work, we use a pattern called an iteration. Many people refer to iterations as sprints. Teams decide the sprint length and keep sprints to 1 to 4 weeks long. Most companies have sprints of 2 weeks or less. These sprints are planned back to back so that a cadence is created. So if you plan a 2 weeks long sprint, you'll get 2 sprints a month, 6 sprints a quarter, or 28 sprints a year. At the beginning of a sprint, the team does sprint planning. This is when the delivery team decides on what work they will add into their sprint. As they choose the work from the top of the product backlog, they carefully review it with the product owner and pull the work into their queue. This queue is called a sprint backlog. So let's quickly review. The work in the product backlog is selected and pulled into the sprint backlog by the delivery team. They continue to pull in the user stories until they feel they've filled up the sprint with no more than what they can actually finish. It's like going to a Las Vegas buffet. There's always a lot of choices on what to put onto our plate, but we don't overfill our plate with more than what we can finish. A good way to set up the team with a focused mindset is to define a sprint goal at the beginning of the sprint. The sprint goal is an objective for what we need to finish by the end of the sprint. During the sprint, the Scrum team meets daily. We call this the daily Scrum. It lasts no longer than 15 minutes. The daily Scrum is a planning meeting where we can make adjustments and resolve new impediments that have popped up. To keep the meeting succinct, each member of the team keeps the conversation focused on what they've accomplished during the previous 24 hours, what they plan to accomplish during the next 24 hours, and they raise any issues that prevent them from meeting their sprint goal. This meeting is important so that each team member can keep the other team members informed. Did you notice the meeting is not for managers or for bosses? It's for helping inform the other team members. During the sprint, user stories will be getting completed by the team. As this happens, the team members should be reviewing the finished work with the product owner to ensure that each story is passing acceptance tests and that the definition of done are met. It's the product owner who will acknowledge if the work meets the user story requirement. Once the story is accepted, the team member will move on to the next user story. This is typically the next most important story on the sprint backlog. As the sprint comes to an end, the team would have finished several user stories. The result of completing these stories is called a potentially releasable increment. They will discuss the finished work in a meeting called the sprint review. Often, the team will invite stakeholders and others to review the finished work together with all of the team members. This is a great opportunity to get feedback from people within the team as well as outside of the team. Can the work be moved to production or used immediately? That depends on the product owner. The product owner makes the decision based on a number of factors. A working principle here is build on cadence, deliver on demand. So build in sprints, and when there's sufficient enough value that's been created that can benefit the customer, then deploy that finished work to the customer as quickly as possible. Finally, the team will meet privately and discuss how they can improve their own performance. This is called the sprint retrospective. The topics in the meeting can be very open between team members, and the conversations can become sensitive. Therefore, to keep the dialogue open and transparent, management should avoid attending these meetings. Instead, we want to have the team create their own ideas on how to improve and incorporate management feedback separately. That keeps the environment safe. Finally, the Scrum Master. The Scrum Master focuses on helping create an environment where the team can maximize their performance. Therefore, we see the Scrum Master looking to coach other team members in Lean and Scrum practices. The Scrum Master also works to resolve the team's impediments and supports the product owner by helping the product owner keep focus on the product backlog. The Scrum Master is asking, how can I help the team? And they're asking, what is slowing us down? The Scrum Master is the team role responsible for ensuring that the team lives the Agile values and principles and follows the processes and practices that the team agreed that they would use. The responsibilities of this role include clearing obstacles, establishing an environment where the team can be effective, addressing the team dynamics, ensuring a good relationship between the team and the product owner as well as others outside the team, protecting the team from outside interruptions and distractions. The Scrum Master role was created as part of the Scrum framework. The name was initially intended to indicate someone who is an expert at Scrum and can therefore help coach others. The role does not generally have any actual authority. People filling this role have to lead from a position of influence, often taking a servant leadership stance. Is the Scrum Master a project manager? In Scrum, the work of a traditional project manager is absorbed by the Scrum team, so in many cases, project managers are not needed on a Scrum team. However, it's not uncommon for people with the job title of project manager to take on the role of the Scrum Master. Just remember, a Scrum Master and project manager are not the same thing. In review, the first meeting in the sprint is called sprint planning. The team pulls user stories onto their sprint backlog. They meet daily at the daily scrum to plan on what they will do that day to achieve the sprint goal. There is also a time where they share impediments and other concerns. As the work is finished, the team reviews the work with the product owner who will accept or reject the work. At the end of the sprint, the accepted work is reviewed by the entire team and can be shared with stakeholders. And privately, the team will retrospect on their performance and put together a plan to help improve. Once this is done, the work cycle begins again with a new sprint. Here are some hints to make Scrum easier to adopt and help avoid common causes of failure. First, try your hardest to do Scrum as it's taught. Don't try to make changes before you first try Scrum the way it was designed. 2, try not to have one person play more than one role. The jobs are hard enough, so avoid giving someone multiple roles as this creates confusion and invites unnecessary problems. 3, the Scrum Master should be a cheerleader of sorts because Scrum is hard. They'll need to encourage team members when they get frustrated, as well as help the team focus on improvements. 4th, don't worry about being perfect. Help the team continuously reflect on what they're learning and help them implement improvements on how to work. That's it. Scrum. Does it sound easy? The process is straightforward, but doing Scrum takes a lot of practice. And once you've mastered it, you'll wonder why you haven't been doing this all along. I am Stacey Louie of Hyperdrive Agile. Thank you for joining.